Hello and welcome. My name is Inge Patch, and today I want to talk with you about how the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, are relevant for social entrepreneurs, and change makers. And I want to particularly focus on SDG number 12, sustainable consumption. But what are the SDGs? For those of you who haven't heard about it yet, there has been a framework developed by the United Nations under integration of various stakeholders over several years. Between 2013, 14, 15, they have sat down and said, okay, how can we actually design a mission, something which is like an overarching goal for the whole planet, and what should be joint goals we should pursue in order to stay safe on this planet. And therefore, they have developed this set of 17 sustainable goals, sustainable development goals, of which are like 4 connected to natural resources. So number 15, life on land, number 14, life below water, number 13, climate action, and number 6, clean water and sanitation, are mainly belonging like to a biophysical realm of reality. Another 6 are related to human well-being. So there are things in there such as no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, and reduced inequalities. So I think most of these targets are containing things which we all would agree upon. We want less children to die before the age of 5, or we want less inequalities between man and woman, for example. We want the same access to school or to health service, no matter which gender or which race or which whatever you're from. So then there are like 2 goals which are mainly to keep all these goals together. One is like peace, justice, and strong institutions, which means that you can only really work on well-being and development if you're like in a safe environment, as well as partnerships for goals, saying, okay, we all need to join hands and do this together. This is not the I thing. This is not only one country can do it, but this needs to be something done in collaboration. And then there are 5 more goals which can be more assigned to the economic realm, so to say. So sustainable cities and communities, affordable clean energy, economic growth and decent work, infrastructures, and last but not least, sustainable consumption. And it's this last indicator, which is very much, of course, all these indicators are connected, and we'll talk about this a while later, but it's this last indicator I want to briefly go a bit more into detail, because I think this is exactly what social businesses and social entrepreneurs are often about, sustainable consumption. Well, of course, social entrepreneurship is often beyond the consumption topic, and yes, we are in a consumer society and we should question whether we have to still consume, but as long as consumption is still the ongoing pattern, it makes sense to say, let's make this consumption at least with less impact, and then we can parallelly also integrate structures which maybe take out a few things from consumption, but that's something I discuss in another video more. So let's have a look at the SDG number 12, responsible consumption and production. And all SDGs are actually split up. So every goal has then indicators, and the indicators has sub-goals, and these indicators are then again saying, okay, how can we measure this? So for example, the first target of the goal SDG 12, responsible consumption, is so 12.1 is implementing of the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption. So this means that every country on this planet is supposed to set up some kind of 10-year framework program which fits into its culture, its area, its resources it has, and saying, okay, how can we actually implement more sustainable consumption in our country, in our area. And as of 2019, 97 countries have come up to do so, which means that approximately half of the participating countries have taken this serious and have written at least one framework, no matter how strongly this is implemented or not. But the other half of the countries hasn't even sat down and made a strategy, so to say. The second one, and this is probably, the first one is something where as a social entrepreneur, you're not so much in the possibility to do something. The second one, 12.2, achieve the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources, relates to the idea of saying, what is the material footprint we have? So how much material do we actually turn over at the moment? how much domestic material consumption do we have? So how much does every household consume per capita per year? And we could unfortunately see that these numbers have been increasing over the last years from 7% from 10.8 metric tons to 11.7 metric tons in 2017. And this increase happened almost everywhere but in North America and Africa. So in this next target, actually, any kind of social business or enterprise which would be able to say, okay, I implement a true cradle-to-cradle approach, would be able to considerably reduce, for example, these numbers, or anything which managed to satisfy any need with less material would also be helpful there. So type D social businesses, and I have made another video about this, are especially helpful, I would say, in that regard. Another target of SDG 12 is 12.3, halve the per capita global food waste at retail and consumer level and reduce losses at the supply chain and production level. Unfortunately, so while I think that this is there is a huge leverage point here, when you check out the official numbers of the SDG, there is very little information available on how is the progress there. You find something about how there is something like a global food loss index, but then there was very incomplete data from many countries, so hence there is no progress report available in a way if you check it out. But again, this is something where it's a huge chance as every social business, or even as a social sustainable business, social conscious business, that you could make your impact by saying, okay, we have a canteen set up, which is having a proper process for food waste, or whatever is left over is made to good use and it not just thrown away. So also here, a lot of chances to actually improve things. Also, social business is concerned, for example, with poverty or no access to healthy food, could be in a good stage here. The next indicator is 12.4, management of chemicals and all wastes, which are like hazardous, which minimize the adverse impacts on humans and nature. So this is all about hazardous waste generated per capita, for example, and how much of this is properly treated, etc. And some of the indicators they have used here is saying how many countries have actually signed international agreements. So, for example, the Montreal Protocol on the ozone was signed by all states and therefore can be considered very successful. There is also a Stockholm Convention on hazardous waste, for example, where if you see the progress indicator, it's like so every country is doing something of it, but it's not really it doesn't seem to be a high priority for most countries. Just to give you one example, an indicator from the SDG dashboard is I checked out the hazardous waste generated per capita in kg. And for Austria, this is, for example, has been 144 kg per person. Just in comparison, a country like Kenya has 0.76 kg generated per person per capita per year. But in the SDG dashboard, they all look quite nice because, for example, there has been Kazakhstan with 7,017 kg generated per year. I haven't really figured out where this high number came from, but therefore all countries actually look doing quite well, even though there is a huge difference between 144 kg as in Austria and 0.76 kg as in Kenya, for example. So again, here, a social business, a social entrepreneurship could really focus on saying, okay, we just simply design all hazardous material out of our process. So we don't use any of this anymore. Hence, we don't contribute a single gram to hazardous waste, for example. And that could be something where you could also align your mission with the Sustainable Development Goals. Another indicator is, for example, 12.5, subsistence reduce of waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling, and reuse. I think this is quite clear. And I go over the next one just quite quick because I think you got the basic idea. So 12.6, encourage large companies to publish sustainability reports. So in order to be more transparent, so transparency is another big topic here, I would say. 12.7, promote public procurement practices that are sustainable in accordance with national policy. And I think this is also a very big part because much of the actual consumption turnover is made through public procurement. And if everything the government would purchase and do and pay for would be more sustainable, we would already be a big step forward. So, but making this like compulsory is still a big step forward. But for example, the economy of the common good is also doing some things in this regard. Another one would be making people aware everywhere that they have relevant information and awareness for sustainable development, so that more and more people know about natural boundaries, about hazardous waste products, etc., and that this is included in curriculum all over the place. Another one is to help developing countries to strengthen their scientific and technological capacities in order to implement or find their own sustainable solutions locally there where they are. Yet another one would be to develop and implement tools to monitor sustainable development impacts for sustainable tourism, which is another big topic. And last but not least is to rationalize inefficient fuel subsidies that encourage wasteful consumption. So at the moment, we have a lot of subsidies which are subsidizing the use of fossil fuels, and this is something which needs to be faded out. So on the SDGs website, on the United Nations website, we find, for example, this graphic, which gives us a short overview on what is happening. So for example, hazardous waste also includes electronic waste, and we can see here that this has been growing by 38%, even though less than 20% is recycled. So a huge potential for all kinds of social businesses or projects such as, for example, the iPhone to really make a difference here. Yes, so having said that much, I also like this picture, which was made by Open Development Mekong River, but which is still valid for all over the place. We can see here how actually SDG 12 is interconnected with so many other SDGs, and how in order to achieve these other SDGs, it's really quite essential to achieve. So we have to look at it from a systemic point of view. And that's something I really want to highlight, saying, when we think about the SDGs, and even though this is not formulated anywhere, we have to always think in this systemic pattern where 1 + 1 is more than 2. And also have in mind that, well, there is a strong path dependency, which is actually influencing the way how people or organizations or countries can react on things. So whatever would work maybe in Switzerland doesn't necessarily work in Romania or in Russia or in Egypt. So we have to really think about the path dependence and the context where we are, and then within say, okay, we try to achieve this with our own means. And I think social businesses and social enterprises or entrepreneurs can be a very good way to localize this global target. So what can you now take from this, or what can a social entrepreneur practically really take from this? I think one thing is, was just said, is saying about thinking global, seeing the bigger picture and seeing how your organization's individual activity contributes, like accumulates to a bigger thing. And you could decide, you don't have to, of course, but you could decide when you really in there to say, okay, maybe you align your mission really to one of these goals and saying, okay, maybe that's not the sole focus, but in our region, that's what we want to do. So, I don't know, reduce the use of hazardous waste in my local district down to 0 by 2030, for example. So that could be a target which would be then broken down to something which is really achievable for you. It doesn't have to be reduced to 0, but it could be half and it by 50%. And then make sure that for your local region, you gather the data and you think about all kind of measures how you could do that. The second one is you could have a high advantage whenever it comes to fundraising, tenders, project applications, and so on. You see that, you remember that there was one thing saying align more country policies with more sustainability in public procurement. So whenever your social business or your enterprise would go and apply for, I don't know, supply the local elderly people's home with food, or want to have some public funds for in order to run a campaign or an event, an awareness event, it's always good if you know about this, because if you write in your project application that you are actually solving the goal 12.8, create more awareness, this can give you a big advantage in actually in order to get any kind of public funds, or if you want to get into a project and so on. So this can be a very helpful tool for you, and more public authorities are picking this up. Last but not least, I see, and you want to change the world with your social enterprise and with your change-making activities. And if any organization or change makers, NGOs, social businesses pick this up, they can actually also help to multiply awareness for those actions which cannot be achieved by entrepreneurial action. For example, get out of fossil fuel, like harmful fossil fuel subsidies, is something which needs a lot of information, lobbying, advocacy, and you can help to spread this word and encourage more people to get around this. So that can be another contribution or overlapping. And then in the same time, with these changing laws, maybe your social business, because once these fossil fuel subsidies would be, for example, faded out, there would be more truth of cost in all products, and then your ecological friendly product is maybe more competitive than it was before. So these were three good reasons and a bit of background why actually SDGs is relevant for sustainable, for social entrepreneurs and social businesses. So I hope you have enjoyed this short video, and if you like my work, please check out my website or follow me on this YouTube channel. Thanks and bye.